Good morning and welcome to Barbara's Bulletin. I'm your host Barbara. Today we're focusing on the ongoing Middle East conflict and its far-reaching effects on global agri-food systems. The crisis, now in its third month, has disrupted supplies of energy and fertilizers, leading to a supply-side shock that's impacting farmers and consumers alike. As we delve into this complex issue, it's essential to understand the interconnectedness of energy, fertilizer, and food markets. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical choke points, has seen a significant disruption in global crude oil exports, LNG exports, and fertilizer exports. This has resulted in farmers facing 20–60% price increases for urea, a key fertilizer, if supplies are available at all. The European Union has responded with $13.6 billion in fuel subsidies and related support measures. However, experts warn that simply subsidizing the shock and waiting for it to pass cannot be the answer to a crisis whose full impact may only become visible later this year and into 2027. The IMF has cautioned against broad and untargeted fiscal responses, which can distort markets and disproportionately benefit wealthier households. Instead, a better fiscal response would focus on temporary and targeted income support for vulnerable households rather than broad energy subsidies. Support for farmers should reflect their exposure to fertilizer and fuel costs, while preserving incentives for efficiency and continued production. Governments should also stabilize markets and maintain supply flows through alternative trade routes. Long-term priorities should focus on building resilience, including strategic fertilizer reserves, renewable energy expansion, and more sustainable fertilizer production systems that reduce dependence on fossil fuels. It's crucial to recognize that energy, fertilizer, food, and climate policies are interconnected and should be treated as part of the same system. As we navigate this complex crisis, it's essential to consider the potential consequences of our actions. Repeating past mistakes could be economically costly and strategically short-sighted. Instead, we should strive for a more nuanced approach that supports adjustment and resilience, rather than just subsidizing the present. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're continuing our coverage of a story that's been making headlines in recent days: the case of a U.S. Army soldier whose wife was detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, despite her husband's service to this country. Sergeant John Serrano, an Afghanistan war veteran, has been speaking out about his wife's ordeal, and we're going to take a closer look at their story. Rivera Ortega, Sergeant Serrano's wife, was granted release from ICE custody after being detained for over a month. However, her future in the United States remains uncertain. According to Sergeant Serrano, his wife was informed while in ICE custody that she could be deported to Mexico, a country where she has no relatives or ties. This is particularly concerning for the couple, as U.S. service members face restrictions on traveling to certain parts of Mexico. Sergeant Serrano's lawyer, John B. Moore, is exploring different legal avenues for Rivera Ortega to obtain permanent U.S. residency through a green card or other means, based on her marriage to Sergeant Serrano, an American citizen born in Puerto Rico. Now, I want to go back to Sergeant Serrano's comments about his commitment to the U.S. military. Despite what happened to his wife, he says it hasn't shaken his faith in the country or the Army. In fact, he praises the support he's received from his superiors and the Army community. As we consider this story, it's essential to acknowledge the complexities of our immigration system and the challenges faced by military families. We must also recognize the dedication and service of individuals like Sergeant Serrano, who have put their lives on the line for this country. The outcome of Rivera Ortega's case remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: it has sparked a broader conversation about the intersection of immigration policy and military service. As we continue to follow this story, we'll provide updates and insights, ensuring that our coverage remains fair, balanced, and informative. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. As we wrap up today's show, we're taking a closer look at the ongoing situation in Gaza. Reports are emerging that activists from a Gaza-bound aid flotilla have been detained by Israeli authorities after their vessels were intercepted in international waters. The flotilla, which set sail from southern Turkey, aimed to deliver humanitarian assistance to war-shattered Gaza despite Israel's blockade of the region. According to organizers, the flotilla consisted of 50 vessels with participants from 40 countries. However, Israeli forces intercepted the ships, and all 430 activists on board were transferred to Israeli vessels. The Israeli government has stated that it will not allow any breach of the lawful naval blockade on Gaza, while the activists argue that they are trying to bring much-needed aid to the region. The detainees are currently being held at Ashdod port in Israel and are expected to be taken to Ketziot prison in the southern Negev desert. The Israeli rights group, AIDailyPress, has stated that the activists were detained against their will and their lawyers are seeking to meet with them. The situation has sparked international concern, with leaders from several countries, including Italy and South Korea, speaking out about the detention of their citizens. The Italian Foreign Ministry has stated that its citizens are expected to be transferred to a facility for identification and then allowed to depart, while the South Korean president has criticized Israel's actions as way out of line. As the situation continues to unfold, it's essential to consider the complexities of the conflict and the humanitarian needs of the people in Gaza. With over 2 million people displaced and many living in difficult conditions, the need for aid and support is pressing. That's all for today's Barbara's Bulletin. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay engaged.